quorum. We have 4 of the 5 commissioners, so, okay, so that's been approved.
Chairman, may I approach, please?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Just want to make sure we had that.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the agenda with the changes of new business from the order of item number C to the item number D, item number D to become item number C.
I second that motion.
Any comments? All in favor? Okay. That was a point of clarification, so. All right, new business. First item, an amendment request for the permitted use table. Ron,
Good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. Tonight I have a zoning ordinance text amendment to the permitted uses table. Currently, right now, we have a use that's entitled parking lots or structures as a primary use. We typically, our truck parking that we're seeing a lot of requests for are typically put under that zoning category. And our purpose tonight is to change in the C2 zoning category, which is highlighted there on the screen. In the C2 zone, we would like to change that from a permitted use to a special exception use to try to limit the exposure of where some of these truck parking facilities can be located within the city limits. Currently, as you can see, it was already a special exception in the I2 zone, which is our medium-density industrial zoning district, but it was a permitted use in a commercial district. So we felt that because of this rise in the number of requests that we're receiving, and because we want to make our zoning ordinance much more clear on this type of a use and any limitations that it may have, it was prudent to also look at our permitted uses table and make changes to that as well to try to limit the exposure of that in a commercial zone.
any other changes in this material?
Not for this item, no.
Okay.
Ron, is this for existing businesses as well, or people grandfathered in? How do we?
Sure. This is actually for any new businesses that would be coming into the city, not for any existing businesses, since they're already they were already permitted there at some point.
Very well. Thank you.
So is there a recommendation to approve
Yes.
this as changed?
Yes, sir.
May I hear a motion to do so?
I move that we approve the amendment request to the permitted use table as submitted.
Second.
There's been a motion to approve the permitted use table as presented and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay, unanimous. Okay. Next
Thank you.
item, Ron.
Next item is an amendment to section 7.02, subsection 17 of the zoning ordinance entitled Parking of Commercial Vehicles. This item also kind of plays off of the last item as far as limiting truck parking in certain areas, but also the actual commercial truck standards that we did have on file. We wanted to kind of tighten some of those up and have more regulation on these trucks. We noticed that we didn't have anything related to like idling, for example. So is idling parking or is it standing and all of that? So we really kind of wanted to just limit because of odors and debris and traffic and things like that. We didn't mention that in the zoning ordinance for commercial truck parking. But we also wanted to add 3 additional regulations. One that would limit the time that a truck can be parked on a truck parking lot facility. We wanted to limit that to 48 hours, no more than that. Typically, these types of facilities are a sleep overnight and go the next day. So we didn't want it to be open-ended and have it to where the same truck could be parked on a facility for a week or 2 weeks or what have you. But we've also started to see a rise in just trailers, not the actual truck itself, but the trailer being left behind on a lot of lots as well. And a lot of businesses were considering that outdoor storage. But this would also not permit that as well. So it would have to be at all times on a truck parking facility that gets a special exception in a C2 zone or is permitted outright in an OMI zone. They would have to be connected to a trailer at all times. They can't leave their load behind and then go to another town or go to another part of the state and pick up somewhere else and then come back for that load. And our last regulation here is to try to kind of rein it in again with the truck parking. It's the facilities, right now, typically facilities either have a very small office on site or no office at all. So in the event that they don't have an office, we don't really have any regulation on where a truck can park other than inside of the buffer zones on a property or inside that landscape buffer, et cetera, once an actual parking lot is applied for in Bobby's office. So we thought that it was in the best interest to kind of give some direction. If there's no building on site, it should be parked behind the front yard setback line. So that could be 25 feet. It ranges depending on the road classification, but it's typically around 25 to 35 feet or so in most of our zoning districts. So we thought that we kind of covered some of the main points here as a part of this change that we're proposing. So we're recommending approval of them.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
In the converse to the example you gave, with regards to, I wonder if it's a bobtail. I mean, if it doesn't have a trailer attached to it, it's just the tractor part.
Yes.
Have we addressed that? Would that be able to stay, or are we just talking about the trailers, or they have to be combined? What's the situation?
That's considered a truck as well.
Okay.
So if it's just the, I guess, the semi part of the truck.
The tractor part, the bobtail.
Yeah, the tractor
bobtail.
part.
Okay.
And then if it's a truck with an actual trailer, it would be the same regulation for both.
Okay, just make sure we're clear.
Yeah,
Because I have quite a few, where I live there on Liberty Road, we have
sure.
quite a few. The truck stop in the east-west, we have quite a few in that area.
Well, Liberty Road, Edge Road.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
this will address all of those issues that we've recently
Right,
had. So,
correct. Mhm.
okay. Any other questions for Ron?
Nope.
Comment? May I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the amended request of section 7.02, subsection 17, the zoning ordinance.
There's a
Second.
Okay, any moved and seconded, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you, gentlemen.
brings us to item D, preliminary plat approval for Twin Oaks. Bobby?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, as is normal procedure, anytime we have a new phase of a residential development, preliminary plat approval is required by the Planning Commission. This one's a little bit different, a little bit unique in that the original preliminary plat was approved in 2004, but the development was never final platted. Therefore, the original preliminary plat expires after a year. So hence, here we are. This particular development's got all streets in, all curbs, all infrastructure, everything was installed, and just, I like to say, the shade was pulled on it around the downturn. The developer has picked it back up, and he's in the process now of installing a brand new lift station, televising all the sanitary sewer, pressure testing all the water, bacteriological testing the water, making sure everything, is approvable even after it's been sitting for 15 years. Hence, the preliminary plat is on your agenda. I'll tell the Planning Commission this. When this was originally approved, the back two streets were approved with a 45-foot right-of-way, which about blew my mind. 50-foot right-of-way is the absolute minimal on a local street. So I had the engineers fix it. Minimum lot size by zoning in this, as it was in units 1 and 2A, is 10,000 square feet. By changing these roads that 5 feet, we've got 8 lots that fall just 150, 175 feet short of the 10,000 foot minimum. But the average square footage in the whole development is 10,187 square feet. I just didn't think, we didn't think it was appropriate for them to rip up streets and reallocate, regrade, redo everything to try to fix that. So that's the only caveat in this preliminary plat that's different from the norm. That being said, staff has reviewed the plat for content on everything else, based on everything that we can find that goes back to 2004. We would recommend approval of the preliminary plat. Now, we've had some questions raised by some HOA members in phase 1. And each one of these plats references the original set of covenants that was recorded March 15, 2004 for Twin Oaks subdivision. And if you'll go back to the first page, Teresa, if you can. Middle of the page, far left. Blow it up some, Teresa, if you can. There's a note there that references the original covenants. This particular unit is subject to those covenants with them being on this plat, as was Twin Oaks Unit 2A. The same note is listed. Now, as a city staff person, all I can do is make sure this is on the plats of record. I have no control over what happens at the closing table when people buy homes, whether there's an HOA that's been formally set up with dues, et cetera. I have no control over that. So that question has come up, but we did print off several copies of those original covenants. If there's anyone here tonight that would like to see those, they can take a copy home with them if they've never seen them before. But that's just a caveat I threw in. I mean, it's been some question for the last couple months. And I downloaded those, or had them downloaded this morning from the clerk's office. And indeed, all phases of Twin Oaks are subject to these covenants.
So the new section will come under the current HOA
Yes, sir.
requirements?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any concern, you had mentioned there was a difference in the lot dimensions, and you said you didn't see that as a big issue?
There's 8 that fall just short of the 10,000 minimum. I didn't think it was enough. I think it's like 27% out of the total. That versus, costing the developer $200,000 or $300,000 to try to lose lots and fix streets.
Would that be more likely a variance than a change?
Being as it's a preliminary plat, it could be approved with that in. Now, when we get the final plat to council, that may be a different story.
Okay.
We may have to do it. They may have to do a variance on those.
Any comments from the commissioners?
But this plat has not changed one bit. You can lay the new one right on top of the old one, except for the width of the street on the 2 back streets.
David?
You know, my concern is, you know, I live not too far from there, and I'm gonna just go back to, is there anything in the works on relieving the congestion at,
South Carroll and
Yes, sir.
Mr. David, we don't have anything in the works, but we've got a new development that's interested in developing a 75-acre tract that's owned by Tanner. It looks like that's going to come to pass. If it does, they will be required to do improvements to that intersection.
Where is that located?
Adjacent to this. isn't it?
Almost directly behind Bojangles
On the way
on
to
61.
Charlie's there.
Okay, okay.
Is that the kudzu field?
It
that's
is.
right there
Yes.
beside?
Yes, sir. We can hang our hat on that, because we're gonna require a traffic study without a doubt because of, like you said, the intersection's already just taxed like crazy.
It's
So
something else.
before we add anything else bigger than that, we're gonna have it studied and improvements.
How many homes are we talking about here? How many lots?
67.
67, that's what I thought.
And the other development, that's a couple of hundred, right? You talking about the Tanner property? I know that's not what we're discussing
Oh,
here,
it
but-
depends on which way they go with it.
Okay.
It could be a couple hundred, yes.
And then you mentioned that I mean, it's referenced here, and you also mentioned that you can't control what happens at the closing table. I understand that. Is there a way to put a condition on this plat that, I don't know, some stronger language in there that it will be subject to the HOA? Is that even appropriate?
We, in a previous life, I had it in our regulations that on a planned unit development, it was mandatory that an HOA be established with mandatory dues and covenants. I don't have that reg here in Villarica. We're talking about putting it in. But that would be as far as we could go with it. I mean, we couldn't, guarantee anything at the closing table. I just can't believe, we've had 12 lots on Unit 2A that have the same note, and I understand from the HOA people that none of those folks were even advised of an HOA when they went to the closing table.
Mr. Rogers, I'm the attorney for the HOA. I know it's not time for public comment yet, but I think I can provide a little clarification on what property is and is not subject to the covenants currently.
Would you please wait until we get to we'll have an open hearing about this, so.
I understand. There's some information that's not correct regarding that plat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My other question is, and maybe this is gonna be a question for their attorney, is there anything that is gonna, that has a rental cap or
Not to my knowledge,
restriction on
no.
rentals in this? Okay.
Any other comments for Bobby?
Mr. Elliott, there's another new development south on 61 that's proposed to come in. And a pretty large development if it comes to fruition. With how big of an impact are you talking about between something like that and this kind of development, which is continuing to occur? And
Are you speaking about Avamore?
yes, sir.
Avamore's gonna come out, they're gonna have their own signal on 61.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's gonna have a huge impact on that South Carroll. Especially it's not really the South Carroll light, it's about 600 feet east of that.
Mhm.
Is where all these are gonna come in.
Okay. I just think we're adding to the burden all through that area there. All right, thanks.
If there are no other questions for Bobby, I would like to open this for open discussion. Miss, if you would like make your comments?
Thank you. My name is Miranda Jordan.
Step up to the microphone, please,
Yes.
and speak up.
My name is Miranda Jordan. I am the attorney for Twin Oaks Communities Homeowners Association. There are concerns that were briefly mentioned. In addition to those, the increased traffic through the existing residential area itself. So, as a matter of fact, 2A and 2B are not subject to the covenants that are not part of the association. But there's going to be a tremendous impact on the homes that are in the original Phase 1, Unit 1 of the association. All of the traffic is going to be coming through, on that map up there, you can see there's a street coming in, Great Oak Place, and that's going to be the only entrance and availability to get to the 2B development. All the way at the back of the neighborhood, that's going to create increased traffic for the current homeowners who have been there since beginning in 2004. The covenants were recorded, as the gentleman said, March 15th, 2004, with no additions to any of the original property that was subject to. The only property that was subject to is on Plat Book 82, page 15 and 16, and that shows, again, that original Unit 1. Unit 2A was never subject to, and Unit 2B has not been subject to either. It is not necessarily the contention of the HOA that not be currently or future subject to, but of course that would involve an actual document that is signed and filled out by the owner that says that this lot or these set of lots are all subject to. To this point, the HOA has not been approached with wanting to do that. Just because something is printed on a plat that says this is subject to covenants, unless the covenants say this legal description, this plat is subject to, then that's just verbal language there. But it's going to be putting a huge burden on the association as it exists right now, not only for just the increased traffic and increased road travel for roads that have not been repaired in the 16, 17 years since they've been created, and they are city roads. But it's also going to create a burden on the infrastructure that was created for the neighborhood. Basically, they're not paying anything for retention pond maintenance and that sort of thing, but they're going to be relying on that. We've also had issues, Twin Oaks has had issues in the past with the neighboring subdivision, Ashbury, who doesn't have amenities, coming over and using the Twin Oaks amenities without permission. We believe that will continue to be an issue because, you know, it's on the plat. It says that they're part of the HOA. They can come use the pool if they want to. There needs to be a little bit more clarity there before this would be approved, to be able to say in proper documentation that those properties become subject to. And if they do, to require them as part of the approval to have some sort of amenity designed for that part of the neighborhood, for that Phase 2. Or if that were not ideal for them, just to be able to make their own HOA that has their own responsibilities, their own maintenance agreement with the Phase 1 HOA, to be able to deal with things like maintenance of retention ponds and so forth. Those are very large expenses for HOAs in the area, and it looks like somebody is just coming to try to tail end on somebody else's work without actually taking any kind of responsibility for those things. I did double check just now. There were no amendments adding any of the additional the property to the HOA itself. But again, they're going to be taking on a tremendous burden of 68 more homes, traffic for those 68 homes by allowing this in. If there were another access point to this development from a major road, that would be helpful. But again, anybody who's sat on South Carroll Road on any time in the afternoon knows you're just sitting there, and that additional traffic going in is just going to create additional burden for that as well. Do you guys have any questions for me that I can clarify for the HOA?
I have a question. I just wanted for clarity for the people in the audience. You're talking about the street that's coming in, the main artery that's going to deliver traffic back to the residents back in here. It kind of comes up right in here, does it not?
I believe so. It's kind of hard to tell on that picture. Okay. But it's Great Oak Place. I know the street name.
And the other thing is you mentioned that Ashbury's using the amenities. Are those residents in Ashbury that use the amenities in Twin Oaks, are they required to pay a fee
No,
for
they
that use?
they just break in. But I think there's a lot there's a lot of confusion. Not necessarily of who's allowed to be there and who's not, but as far as security goes, they don't have a pool monitor that checks addresses or IDs. They just have key fobs. They have people jumping the fence. But if you bring in homes that are actually in the same neighborhood, you can understand the confusion where somebody sees their neighbors swimming in the swimming pool and they're not allowed to, how that would certainly create some tension there. I think that would be resolved if there were a condition with approval that they be required to either create a phase 2 with their own amenity or to complete the appropriate paperwork to consent to be bound to the covenants. That would also involve a lot of work on the part of the original association, though, to make a covenant amendment to submit those properties to the HOA. That could have been done at the time of development, and it was not. When it's not done after a certain point in time, then the whole association has to make a vote to allow that in. I think there are a number of people here today from Twin Oaks that would echo some of the concerns. They may have some additional concerns on a more personal level, but just from the board's perspective, all they see is additional costs to them, and then additional wear and tear on the streets coming in, especially through Great Oak Place.
Have you reached out, or has the board reached out? I think it's Johnny Blankenship, I think is the name on here, the developer. Has anybody reached out to Mr. Blankenship about the possibility of development with the HOA covenant, I guess, amendment on each and every property? Because my understanding is he's going to develop the lots, which means he's going to pave out the streets. He's going to sell them out to somebody. Somebody's going to build a house and they're going to sell it to somebody else. There's going to be real estate agents and so on and so forth. Has anybody talked to Mr. Blankenship about consenting to that? Because I imagine he wants to build in the neighborhood people will want him, not what they don't want him.
There were communications a few years ago, I believe, dealing with 2A. If my memory recall, there were.
I'm saying he's here. He's been building houses for years and years.
Yeah, I remember that there were some dealings with him and the management company.
Yeah.
So, but that kind of hasn't come to fruition. Thank you.
Anyone have
Thank you.
any further questions for? Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item, either for or against this Twin Oaks proposal? Please state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Winston Porter. I live at 644 Nine Oaks Circle in Twin Oaks subdivision. I'm a board member and also the president of the HOA. And one of our biggest concerns, we've been going through this. I've been on the board now for 6 years. We've been going through this for full 6 years with the new constructions coming into the community. And I don't know where the ball dropped at, but they don't believe they're part of the HOA. And financially, with more houses coming into the subdivision, it's going to cause more of a struggle for us because we don't have the finances right now to do the kind of improvements that we need. And if we add another 67 houses to the subdivision that are not paying, but using the same streets and I see all the time when children come over from the neighboring neighborhoods and get in the pool. When you bring more families in, we're gonna have a bigger problem with that. And so there's security issues and all kind of things that are going to get bigger and bigger as time go on. And so on behalf of everyone that's in the subdivision that's already there, I really hope that you all will take in consideration that we do need them to be a part of our HOA to strengthen the community and give us all the things we really need inside our community.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Anyone else wish to speak? Again, your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Bethany Robinson. My husband and I, we live 705 Great Oak Place. We are the first house that's on the, going up the subdivision, the street there. And we've only been there, it hasn't even been a year. And we were not instructed that it was going to be any HOA fee, and that's why, as a senior citizen, we bought and thought that we were going to be left alone. So this is something new coming here today for a subdivision a plan on having a subdivision fee. And we don't have any small children. We don't go to the pool. And we see children because we live right across the street from a pool, but I thought it was for the other houses that were as you come in to the subdivision, not so much as our street. So we do see, like that the lawyer said, they do come in, they jump the fence. I've seen them jump the fence because we have bird's eye view right there. So.
I have a question, Mr. Robinson. When you bought your house, when you closed on it at your attorney's office, were you made aware that your property had an HOA attached to it?
No, and I brought that with me.
Okay. Who did the closing?
A lawyer in Douglasville, DeFleur.
DeFore? Okay. Because HOA should run with the property each time it's sold. Once it's admitted, it should stay in the HOA forever.
Yeah.
Until the HOA is dissolved. And even in Georgia, if it's dissolved, it can be revived.
Yes, and even the agent that sold us the house, it was no mention of a HOA fee.
No offense here, David. Agents don't always tell the truth to get the house sold. But,
They're not all created equally.
neither are lawyers. So, but I just wondered, because that would be something, obviously, that are something that people look for, and they ask, is this HOA community or not, good or bad?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to address? Yes, sir? Your name and
Good afternoon,
address?
gentlemen. How are you all?
Good, sir.
Your name and address, please?
My name is Gus Gatlin. My address is 546 Great Oak Place. Okay, that is my neighbor that just came, but I've been here since 2007. Okay, we were the last house on the street that was a part of the original development. My thing is, I get up early in the morning and I have to drive to Atlanta every day. Okay, we got traffic. Okay, coming home, we got traffic. Okay, one entrance. And so you can figure out what's gonna happen with these 68 homes or whatever. It's gonna be the same deal, so, that's my thing, I'm totally against that, so, If we got another entrance, I'm good, so.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Can I ask Mr. Elliott a question?
Absolutely.
Currently, under the zoning, and maybe Mr. Johnson, under the zoning, how many houses are in Twin Oaks currently? Do we know?
I can't remember exactly.
Okay, let us ask it a different way. Yeah, thank you. So if we add 67, 114. So if we add 67 more to that, puts it at what, 185, 188? Does that one entrance still meet the requirements of the city as far as
Requirement,
ingress?
you must have 200 houses to have second entrance.
Okay, so it does fall within the 200 for ingress and regress. Okay. So it's within the code. Okay. Just want to make sure. I thought it was 200, but I didn't know how many were already there.
Now, this is a request for preliminary approval, so there'll be additional considerations as this moves along.
This will come to the city council probably in September for a final plat approval. They're working on some requirements that are standard, maintenance bond, street light fees, those kind of things. I was going to suggest that between now and then, the current HOA and their officers need to get with Mr. Blankenship and see if we can get something worked out to make this thing right, and hope to have it worked out before it goes to city council, because they're going to ask the question.
Is this something that we should consider?
No. Not really.
Planning and Zoning Commission usually comes in when you have a preliminary layout concept. Ms. Miranda was correct. To say this is confusing would be a gross understatement. We've had 5 or 6 developments that have failed in the downturn in various phases of disrepair and disarray. Phase 1 didn't have an HOA. Well, Phase 2 wants to have an HOA. It's just a nightmare for staff to try to figure out how to weed through this. And here we are again,
That's why you get paid the big bucks.
I guess.
But understand that this particular plat, with the exception of the 5 foot on the back 2 roads, was approved in 2004.
Yes.
And had theoretically, had the economy not went in the tank in 2010 or 11, these would have been built out the same way Section 1A was.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And would it be fair also to consider or to say that maybe during that downturn, we had some different builders in there who maybe didn't apply the HOA covenants as it was, on the plats?
Probably so. The city staff at the time played a huge role in that. I'm not throwing rocks at anybody. I'm just, based on where I've been and where my education and experience. A lot of things should have been done that weren't, and here we are.
And do you know, or does Ron know, when did they pave that? That's been paved for quite a while back there. The roads have been in place.
Yeah.
Since they built it.
So everybody that's bought in there knows the roads went back through there. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think, and fellow commissioners, I think this is a time when the residents of the existing homes or units there that have already been developed, I think I would recommend to them that they consult legal advice and get an attorney to help represent them in this matter. And if they need to or want to impose covenants or institute an HOA or make themselves subject to the existing one or something, I think that's, I think that would be, it'd be advisable for them to seek legal assistance in that. So I just throw that out there.
Well, I think that's essentially what Bobby just said,
Yeah,
that between now and
yeah.
the final plat, that they get together and do
Yeah.
that. What is the staff recommendation then?
Staff recommends approval of the preliminary.
Any conditions?
No.
Okay.
So my question, is it even appropriate? Is it legally allowed if we do put a condition of approval with making Unit 2B as part of the covenant set forth on March 15th, 2004, as referenced in the plat book 2632, page 93? Do we have that latitude?
Based on what the attorney just stated, probably won't help. But there can certainly be an agreement reached between both parties by the time this thing becomes a plat of record.
I think what I was asking, Michelle, is we can't
No.
impose that as a condition. I think that's a private matter between homeowners.
Yeah.
We can't, that's an overreach, I think, as government. I don't think you can make people have an HOA if they don't want one.
That's one reason they need legal assistance,
Yeah, I think so too.
Mr. Golden.
I agree.
May I have a motion?
I will make a motion to adopt or approve the preliminary plans as proposed today for Section 2B.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much for the representatives who spoke, and Bobby, thank you, and on to the next item.
Chairman, may I for just 1 minute?
I'm sorry?
May I speak for a moment?
Oh, yes.
you know, what I want to say about Twin Oaks, and we're in Bay Springs, and I feel your pain with your pool and the amenities, and, you know, as the subdivision grows and as, you know, the summers are hot, it's a lot of pressure. And I would just encourage everyone to try to get together on, you know, some kind of resolution so that the HOA can stay afloat without an extra strain on it, on the amenities and.
Thank you, Kevin. Bobby?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, last October, my highly competent staff member here decided to do an audit on the Mirror Lake PUD just to see where we were as far as how many homes had been built, how many multifamily units had been constructed. As a result of that audit, we only had 81 surplus lots left from what was originally approved by City Council back in 97, 98 when Mirror Lake first came about. Based on that fact, we scrambled around and said, oh, you know, we built a lot of houses in the last 3 years. And, you know, as Mr. Barber says frequently, you know, we've got some issues here in Billerica, and mostly with infrastructure. The only way to get out of it is to grow out of it. I know y'all have heard him say that. So we met, we being Ron, Chris Montesinos, myself, Tom, Mr. Barber, and City Attorney and Mayor McDougal, had lunch one day, and we said, look, you know, how would be the best way to go about amending this original zoning without pretty much destroying it with the new zoning ordinance that we just adopted back last August the 11th, you know, with new regulations on PUDs and rear entry garages and all kinds of stuff. So Mr. Barber and I, after 2 or 3 meetings, we said, look, okay, let's look at this thing, everything that's left, and everything, I've got 2 maps up, everything in the tan color is what's left to be developed in Mirror Lake. How would be the best way to go about that and I get laughed at about this phrase I'm getting ready to say, to maintain the flavor that is now Mirror Lake? Given the fact that no minimum house sizes were approved in the original zoning, Mirror Lake evolved based on what it is today, a really, really special place. So the task at hand was to sit down as a staff, get with the investors who own the tan areas and their representatives, and try to come up with a revised plan that would do just that. We started probably last November, and we had a revision, you guys had a revision as of yesterday. You know, so there's been like 8 iterations on this thing that we've gone through. We consulted with the HOA in Mirror Lake toward the end, and I'll give you the reason why. You know, my mother used to say, you can't have too many cooks in the kitchen. You never get anything done. We didn't want to mire this thing down to a point where nobody could agree on anything. So we took it, we ran with it. I'll commend Kevin Spindell and Alan Resch both. They've been great to work with. We told them what we wanted. They pretty much agreed to it.
Excuse me, by who are they?
They are the investors' representatives. They are not the Jaffe, but the other company. You know, Jaffe was, I think their services were, discontinued by Mirror Lake. And These two guys represent the investors that own the rest of the properties. With that being said, we decided to not make them make application on this. They were so good to work with. We felt to save time, it would be easier and faster if the city acted as the applicant, much like we did with the revised zoning ordinance. We created it from within. A lot of Mirror Lake folks that are here tonight weren't consulted. That was not planned. But I know there's a lot of misinformation that's out there that we hope this document that we've got here, once everybody gets it and can look at it and go through it, will understand that we've done everything we can to try to do what's best, not only for the city, but especially for the Mirror Lake people. The master plan ties everything else down in Mirror Lake. No more lots can be added down the road or what. That's it. Now, they can have less than that, depending on how much rock they hit on various lots, and we know there's rock in Mirror Lake. But everything in this zoning document and that master plan, they tie together just like this. I can't go over every single, we call them pods, but they're individual developments that are in these. The zoning document has each one listed with setbacks, minimum house sizes, architectural controls, everything that we could tie down that we could push them to. Our chief building official, Tracy Jarvis, played a big role in that portion of this. We had a recent amendment, and I'll point it out. I've got big maps up, but they've agreed to add a buffer around this entire shoreline on Fairway 17 to kind of protect that. I didn't tell Kevin this, but they were probably going to have to do that anyway, since we got a 75-foot buffer around lake edge. But you know, that being said, we got it anyway. They also amended a minimum lot width in, I think it's Fairway 16 to 60 feet from 50 feet. With that, Mr. Chairman, I don't know how much more of this I can go into without getting way down in the weeds. We could be here for 2 days.
Mr. Elliott, I read through this recently, and I just had some questions. We'll start with Fairway 16. I think you call it Fairway 16 node. I understand house separation is 10 foot. Is that acceptable? I mean, I brought tape measures 12 foot. I mean, 10 foot ain't. Let's see. We about up to there.
So we neighbors or roommates?
Well, we got to be 6 foot apart CDC, so hell, I don't know how we're going to be 10 foot. I mean, is it acceptable?
Mr. Pilgrim, we discussed that quite a bit.
I mean, 10 foot just seems to me that if we approve this and they get 10 foot, the development's going to be all nice and shiny and new, and everybody's going to jump up and down for a few years. But we have watched Mirror Lake. One had been here since '73 when I was born. I've watched Mirror Lake go from a very rural area. I've watched them develop. They've missed on some neighborhoods out there. They've hit on some. Some are really nice. Some have held up their value. Others have missed on. And we got Section 8s. We've got rentals. We've got essentially hurting the people who have invested good money into really nice homes out there. I'm just not sure 10 foot apart. I don't see how that helps us as a community going forward. How does that become desirable 7, 12, 15 years from now?
Well,
'Cause I plan on still being here.
well, it's actually 12 foot apart, not 10.
It's
We
10
got a-
on this page.
We got a 1 foot overhang
It says house separation 10 foot, and that's on 16, 17, on Northwoods Node, on Northwoods Node Phase 3. All of those are minimum, and if I've ever met a builder, they're gonna build it as close as they can.
Well-
Because they're gonna maximize the amount of.
With a 1-foot
What they get for
overhang on
property.
each house,
Yeah.
it's gonna end up being, the house structure itself will be 12 feet apart, not 10.
So you're talking about the actual base of it.
But the
Yes.
But if you
The
cantilever,
walls.
so if you cantilever it over, you can actually get closer.
The gutters, the overhangs, 10 foot.
But I'm just saying, the point is saying the base. So if you
You-
cantilever it over,
You can't leave it over, you can't get any closer. No, sir.
all right.
But the 10 foot is like for the eaves. Is that what you're talking about?
No, 10 foot is the house wall structure separation.
Brick to brick.
But it's 12. Because if you project that line up to the overhang,
All right.
the actual house is 1 foot back from the overhang. So the actual houses are 12 feet apart instead of,
Let me
the
ask-
overhangs are 10.
Let me ask you a
Okay.
question, for
Thank you.
instance. The South Harbor area, we say we're developing South Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
Now, South Harbor has some really nice homes, really large square footage homes. And I think here the minimum is 3,000 square foot, a two-story plan, and it's 26. What is the current average in South Harbor? What's the current average neighborhood?
3,500 in phase 1.
So why don't we make it 3,500 for phase 2?
Well, the minimum in phase 1
Yeah.
was 2,800.
Okay. Well, you said there weren't any minimums earlier. You said when they built them, there was no minimums. In
No, no, no.
1998.
I'm talking about what's there right now, what's
But the-
been built.
The average is 3,500.
Yes.
Well, let's try to not meet the minimum, let's try to be better. How about we set it at 3,500? Because that sets a price point, and therefore it protects the people who are already there, and it attracts the type of neighbors and people we want, and we're not gonna have, 10 years from now, we're gonna have a neighborhood nobody wants to live by.
Right.
Or a neighborhood wants to live by. I mean, why are we setting the base minimum when we have the opportunity not to recreate and do the same problems we did earlier? We tried to hit too many places. I say we, like I had something to do with it. But as a development, Mirror Lake tried to do too many things for too many people. They tried to hit all the price points, and it just doesn't work. So let's not make that mistake again. That's my point. I don't mind development. I don't mind building houses. I've lived in Mirror Lake before. But, you know, it's one of those things where I look at it and it's like some of these places have missed. And I think the reason why they've missed is people move in, first generation of the house, 7 or 8 years, they move out. Next thing you know, 2 generations later, it's a rental, it's a Section 8. We have another economy bump, which we may have, the housing market, who knows? And then all of a sudden, we've got a bunch of empty houses sitting there. I don't want to see that happen again, because I think this has been good for Villa Rica as a whole. It's brought some things we don't like, but it's been good. And I don't want to lessen it, I don't want to bring it anywhere below where it already is. I want to advance it, and I'm not sure these minimum 10 foots do that.
Well, this is everything that we could get without going to court.
Who's our developer? Who's the owners? I'll ask a question. Nobody's asking. Who's the developers? Who owns the property? Not the representative. Who owns it?
There's a group of investors that own them. They're in Virginia. I don't know
Oh,
their
you
names.
don't. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
We don't have any development plans that have been turned in on any of this.
But if they want to make money off the backs of the people of Villa Rica and they want to change where we live, they at least drive down here to Virginia and present it, can't they? They don't seem too much to ask, does it?
Well, we've got one of the representatives here.
I represent people too, but it's a little bit different. I just think that, you know, they could at least make an appearance. They shouldn't leave it on the city to do the heavy lifting, which they've done, but.
One point I'd like to make, just to kind of underscore Mr. Pilgrim's, is, I mean, I already see a lot of appraisal discrepancies in Mirror Lake just because they're so vast, there's so many houses. Appraiser can go in there and pretty much do anything they want to do, whether, you know, people agree with it or not, and that's, you know, that's an appraiser's prerogative, it's an opinion. But this, squeezing more lots, especially, you know, South Harbor, Fairway 17, I mean, these are small lots. So I'm just, you know, that's just a comment I have.
Any comments? Again, this is a preliminary request, so subject to change between now and
Yeah, but this,
final plat.
you know it will get transitioned into the final approval when it goes to city council, and then it's all done deals.
Oh, I don't know that at all.
Yeah, this is not a preliminary plat, this is a rezoning.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. You're right.
Any other questions for Bobby? Bobby, may we hear from the developer? You said he was here.
Yes, they're here.
They can't decide who's gonna talk.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Spindell. My address is 6300 Powers Ferry Road. My address is 6300 Powers Ferry Road, Atlanta, Georgia, 30339. I represent the investor group that owns these parcels. Is there anything I can answer for you?
You represent how many investors?
There are approximately 47, maybe 50 investors.
Now, have they always been involved in this
They purchased the property in 2015.
2015?
Correct.
Okay. And you've been working with the city in developing this plan?
We have worked extremely hard with Mr. Elliott and his staff, Mr. Barber, the whole city, in getting this plan to a place. We've worked with the HOA. We've tried to do everything we can to be good neighbors and get a good plan. And I think we've done a good job of it. I'm proud of my work with Mr. Elliott. I'm proud of my work with the HOA. We've worked really hard to get to this point.
Mr. Spindell, who do you work for? Is it your company?
My company is Capstone Development Consulting.
Capstone, okay.
And what is your comment about this 10-foot minimum?
Well, I think it's important to realize that the houses aren't all going to be the same width. If you have a 36-foot house, then that width is that you're going to have more space between the houses. We're not going to have the same size house every single down the line. And I think that's important to remember.
You're not actually, your company, Capstone, for instance, this zoning goes through the city, Senate Council votes off on it. Does Capstone actually hire the builders? Do y'all sell the lots? What's the plan?
So the investor group will sell the parcels to builders and/or developers.
And then you guys are out, Capstone's out of it?
Well, I'm the asset manager for the investment. So I'm here until the company, JLC Mirror Lake Sub 1 LLC, is no longer in business.
Okay.
Unless I get fired. Which sometimes it may be helpful.
It can happen.
Now, when you sell a group of lots to a builder, is he responsible for his own marketing? He can hire any realtor he wants?
Absolutely.
All right. And what's the average lot width in these sections?
Well, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different parcels. So an average lot width is really hard. You've got different, I can't tell you what the average lot width across all of those parcels are. I mean, Bobby, do you know?
No, not off the top of my head, I don't.
Okay.
From 50 feet
To 90.
to 90 feet.
All right. Well, you know you're 60 foot with a
Pardon me? Okay.
a 60
Hold the
foot
comments
lot.
down, please.
I'm sorry, what?
No, go ahead.
Okay, a 60-foot lot, and we're talking about having a 10-foot setback on the sidelines of each lot, right? On each sideline. So if it's in the middle of a block and it's surrounded by houses, the setback from the sideline is 10 feet on each side, correct?
Correct.
Okay? So that means you got a maximum usable width of 40 feet for a house. And I think it's starting to, that starts to translate to some smaller size units. You know, if you're going to get up to 2,500 square feet or above, you're probably going to have to go to two-story.
Certainly.
And, you know, the builder's going to go down market with all of that, and we're going to wind up with masonite siding or some equivalent. Yeah, I know, that's not. But it's going to be, I don't think it's going to add to the character of the neighborhood as it currently exists in those kind of situations. Every builder out there is in business to make a profit. And if they buy a lot, they want to maximize their profit, the sales price, the revenue, and their profit on every lot they buy, because they want to, that's, they're going to put a house on it they can sell for the maximum dollar. And there's nothing wrong with that, so long as we get good quality products there that conform with what's the good properties that are already there in Mirror Lake, and not wind up with a severely down market. I'm not going to mention any names, but there have been some units built that were not at the same level, I'll say,
Certainly,
as what many of us living in there would like to have seen.
certainly.
So I think that's a genuine concern. I don't know, just an observation on my part.
I've got a question on these. You mentioned that the investment group will sell to individual builders. I mean, do you have any insight or any discussion that you could share with us on, I mean, are you looking at like different builders for each section, or is there any breakdown? Like, I mean, is there a minimum amount of
No,
lots that a builder can purchase?
Currently, we have a group looking at 4 of the pods.
Okay.
We have another group that's looking at 2 of the pods. So I don't think you're going to have 17 different builders in here. That's not, I don't foresee that happening.
Thank you.
Now, we just received notice today about this walking trail along Fairway 17. By the way, those numbers are no longer valid. Fairway 17 is not Fairway 17 anymore. That's immaterial. But did this change in the walking trail change your lot dimensions in any way?
Well, I don't know. We haven't gotten into engineering. We're still in a, preliminary phase here. So once we, the building group gets into engineering, they'll have to see how it lays out. But the buffer and the walking trail was, another item that we discussed with the HOA. They requested, and why not? That's easy to do. So certainly we could do that.
I found it interesting. To me, there's some very desirable lots in Fairway 17, right on the lake. And yet the density that you have allowed for homes, number of units per acre, is greater in other areas than it is in Fairway 17.
Right. I think it's important to realize that, this is a PUD, and most PUDs are designed to have different aspects, different house sizes, different lot sizes. I think it's also important to note that in some of the older sections where the houses back up to the lake, they have a clear view of the lake, they can walk out their back door and get to the lake. That's not going to be the case here, where they're going to have a 75-foot buffer. You're not going to be able to see the houses from the lake. It's going to be a green space.
Now, you're speaking of Fairway 17?
Yes, sir.
But not on South Harbor. They'll have clear views of the lake?
However, they choose, that would be up to Mr. Elliott and his staff on what they approve for them to build on those lots.
All lots that touch the lake have buffers attached to them. Those buffers weren't strictly adhered to back in the day. We've changed those now, so we take the buffers very seriously. So you're not going to have, you know, houses that are sitting right down on the back property line. As I mentioned earlier, you know, we've got, around that lake, you've got a mandatory 25-foot buffer that's regulated by Georgia EPD. In 2008, Billerica added 25 feet to that for stream buffer and another 25 feet of impervious buffer. Those all come into play now with the new development of these pods.
Now, is it true that back in whenever it was, in 1998, with the original development, this new proposed PUD reduces the number of single-family and multifamily units from what was originally planned? Is that correct?
Can you repeat that question?
Back in 1998, with the original plan, there was certain number of units that were proposed, certain number for multifamily, certain number of single-family. And I believe this number reduces those numbers. I think there are fewer multifamily units than was originally planned for Mirror Lake.
That is correct. I guess members of the public can actually probably look at that as it's a reduction in your multifamilies and an increase in the single families. So there's a breakdown in the staff report. I believe it's in the back of the staff report that gives exact numbers on what that difference is. But you're really changing out, because it was over 1,000 multifamily units that were approved that haven't been built yet. Only 250 multifamilies have been constructed in Hawthorne. So the remaining units would have been over 1,000. So that's been cut down substantially, and the single family homes have been increased.
Right.
We think that might be best in line for what Mirror Lake calls for in keeping the single family flavor, as Bobby indicated earlier.
Right. Now, there's been no consideration for water and sewer as to how that's going to be accomplished here?
Mr. Chairman, we have some capacity left in our north plant, sewer capacity. But we got two projects underway right now in design to divert some lift station flows from the north plant to the west plant to recoup some capacity. We think we can handle, of course, water's no issue. We got water. We feel like we've got a handle on solving our sewer capacity with the north plant that we have now, based on what we're trying to do.
Okay. And other considerations for infrastructure, roads, et cetera?
Well, obviously, the roadways in the new pods will speak for themselves. We're a little bit concerned with Connors. You know, with its geometry, it's, you know, we're looking at that. We'll have to make some changes if it becomes a problem.
Now, if this is approved, do these units all automatically fall under the current HOA? Could they develop their own HOA?
Mr. Chairman, we've got, in the document itself, we've got, we've consulted with the HOA currently. I think the multifamily units that are listed here are going to have to fall under their own, under the new zoning ordinance with their own amenities and their own HOA if they have one, or if they can create one. I do understand that the track 4 and 5, the HOA is, of course I don't have it in writing, but they've indicated to me that they would prefer they were not part of the HOA in Mirror Lake, so they'll have to do their own. But no, it's not, all these gray pods that you see here are not automatically included.
So they could develop their own HOA
They could, yes.
if desired.
Now, there's also, I didn't cover this, but there's also two new large amenities that are in this document. One in the Northwoods area that includes a large pool with a cabana. And there's a multi-use facility slated to go in the Fairway 17 area, with a building large enough to have meetings, wedding rentals, that kind of thing.
You were going to make a comment regarding,
No, Bobby said it all. He's
okay.
perfectly competent.
Any other comments from the commissioners to either the developer or to Bobby? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Well, at this time, I'll open the floor to public comments and like to ask a representative from the group if they would come forward and give us your name and address. And
My name is Ken Willis. I am the Vice President of the Mirror Lake Community Association. I live at 3012 Catamaran Cove in the Bridgewater subdivision. We're changing up our plan a little bit here. I'm speaking first. I hope I'm not fully timed here. I wanted to address first, I think our lawyer might want to talk about whether or not a pod within the community could form their own HOA and not be a part of ours. I'm pretty sure they're going to be required to be a part of the Mirror Lake HOA, or at least we would have first right of refusal on that situation, which, as we've already talked about track 4 and 5, that's not something that's going to be part of the HOA. Apartment homes, cluster homes are not going to be part of the HOA. But I wanted to speak to numbers just a little bit because I had to dumb things down a little bit and put this in a perspective that I understand. Actually, first I want to thank Mr. Barber and Mr. Elliott for the work they did. I want to thank Kevin and Alan for being agreeable. And I want to thank all of the individuals in this room for caring enough to be here. We appreciate it. I mean, the Community Association appreciates it. We're glad you're here. I wanted to get that stated as well. But I want to talk numbers. The numbers as they existed, well, I complained a little bit about the city, and the city obviously started working on this in November. They mentioned they're working in November. We got our first numbers from Mr. Spindell in March of this year. And the numbers that were presented to us in March added an additional, and I'm talking single-family homes, an additional 997 or 974 single-family homes on 331 acres, 2.9 homes per acre. The numbers that were presented to us with this latest proposal represent 666 new homes to the Mirror Lake Community Association on 286 additional acres for a total of 2.3 homes per acre. So I can't speak to setbacks. I mean, that might be something we have to look closer at, but I can tell you that the original proposal in March that was presented by the declarant or the declarant's agent and the developer was 2.9 homes per acre. They compromised. They came back with 2.3. And I will tell you that the existing Mirror Lake community is at 1,340 homes, roughly 485 acres, and 2.8 homes per acre. So as proposed, we're actually, the homes per acreage in the community is going to go down. So that said, along with the concessions that we've been given, Polly will speak more, but I think the Community Association thinks that we're on a good track. I think there's some more negotiating to be done between now and before council gets a proposal. My conversations with Kevin and Alan, I think they're agreeable to that. We think we've made a lot of good progress. Again, I can't speak to setbacks, but I can speak to these numbers, and we think we've made a lot of good progress.
Before you step down, please.
Mm-hmm.
The latest information I have here says this request would include 790 single-family homes and 517 multifamily units.
Okay. The difference.
For a total of 1,307.
The difference would be the PUD, and I think we're revising the PUD, versus the Mirror Lake Community Association. I'm speaking
Oh.
specifically to homes, and I think you made a very good point, Mr. Flowers, and that there's a lot of confusion, I think, with the residents of the Mirror Lake Community Association with these numbers represent the PUD, and obviously track 4 and 5, Ashley Park, and some of those things are included in the overall PUD, but they are not part of the Mirror Lake Community Association. If everything goes without any additional concessions, the Mirror Lake Community Association is looking at roughly 2,000 homes, if everything gets approved. And again, it's roughly because, as Kevin pointed out, final plating, and they're going to find rocks, they're going to find this and that. I think we're dealing with minimums when we talk about this, so a minimum of 10 foot. It may be more, it may just no less. But it'd be 2,500 homes, roughly 772 acres for 2.6 homes per acre. So that's less home per acreage than what we have right now in the developed portion of the Mirror Lake Community Association. So that being said, again, I can't speak to setbacks and the other stipulations. We're still working on those. We think we have architectural standards that are equal to or better than what we have. And we would have appreciated more time. You know, we just got this late. You guys have been working on it a lot longer than us, but we think we're in a good place. And with that, I'm going to let Polly talk about some of the specific things that we've discussed.
Thank you.
Good evening. So I'm Polly Oliver, 2511 Shoreline Parkway. I also am the president of the Mirror Lake Community Association. First of all, I want to thank Bobby Elliott. We couldn't have survived this last week without his leadership, so thank you very much. As he indicated, we were notified, I think, Alan, you gave us a call, or Kevin, like last Thursday morning. So that's how long the HOA has been working in this. I also want to thank Alan Resch, Kevin Spindell, for their openness to listen to us. It's like we wanted a way to provide all the residents of Mirror Lake with lake access, which we don't have today other than a little gravel lot. And this buffer area along what is now designated as Fairway 17 provides every resident of Mirror Lake with lake access, which the residents have not had in the past. I think these are going to be 2 stellar amenities in addition to the 2 that we already have. So between Bobby, Alan, and Kevin, we have made tremendous progress. Yes, we've been concerned also about the size, the setbacks, and things of that nature. One of the things that I believe we've come to agreement on, I'm sure I'll get a yes or a no in a hurry from back there, is that one of these 2 areas where you may be looking at some concern on some setbacks from building to building, so to say, home to home, will be a senior community. Yes, I'm getting the yes back there. So I don't think anybody else has mentioned that before. So yeah, we were concerned too about the minimum setbacks, but if Reflections, which is our current senior, what do you call it, age designated, age targeted, age designated, thank you back there, whatever it's called, those homes never go on the market. There's a waiting list, so we badly need that. I think it's also important to note that South Harbor, Northwoods, and Southwoods will continue to be developed in the current flavor, I like Bobby's word of flavor, that we have today. Yes, we still have some negotiating to do between now and next week, but the executive committee for the Mirror Lake HOA, the Homeowners Community Association, has been brought into this, as has Miranda, who happens to be our attorney too. So thank you for being here tonight, Miranda, to speak with the other people, or for them. I really appreciate, Mr. Pilgrim, what you said, and Mr. Rogers especially. I think those were very good things, and we've been concerned about them as well. However, we have been extremely encouraged over the past several days with what Alan and Kevin are listening to us to say this is what we feel like the residents of Mirror Lake want, and to have then stepped up. Yes, Bobby told us about the 75-foot buffer, but we need a walking trail and a cart path there, going to an amenity on that lake, which we don't have today. So we have made tremendous inroads. I really appreciate it. And from the executive committee, we're in favor of this. We do want to continue to negotiate with them for the next week. Hopefully it won't be quite as hurried, yes, as we have been the last week. But we're definitely encouraged and really appreciate the work, especially under the leadership of Bobby Elliott. So thank you, gentlemen.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
If this approves in your negotiation, don't you lose position? Wouldn't you have a greater position negotiating with them if this didn't pass?
Well, I'm sure it would,
I mean, so,
but, you know.
if it were
what-
tabled, I mean, wouldn't you have a little stronger position?
Well,
For the
I-
rest, because you represent all the people of Mirror Lake.
I do represent all the people of Mirror
Wouldn't you have a
Lake.
better position? Why give up ground when you don't have to?
I don't feel like we're giving up ground because it's my understanding, and I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission for Villa Rica for a while. You're a recommendation body, so the final decision is
City
made
council.
by the city council.
is.
So we have another week to hopefully complete our negotiations with them. And
Cool.
trust me, I'm tied at the hip with my council rep right now.
We're the puppet court. We don't count, but.
I sat in your seat, I
we
understand.
make recommendations.
Yes, you do.
I just thought that if you can still negotiate with them, this,
Well, they have agreed to continue, right, gentlemen? Yes, we could almost hold an annual meeting. This is probably better than we get for an annual meeting. So, yes, there's a
Just
lot of
wondered.
concern.
ooh.
The annual meeting's always published. Anything else?
The city council meeting will be public.
Thank you.
Yeah, it will.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Polly. Well, at this time, if anyone else would like to address for or against this proposal, please come forward, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am Alan Whitley. I live at 9765 Spyglass Drive in Villa Rica. So we're in Spyglass, we're in Mirror Lake. First of all, I think along the thank yous, definitely a big thank you to Polly and Ken for working to help turn some things in favor of Mirror Lake. I really would, feel compelled to support the negotiations that are ongoing. I will say this, to this body, I would say, what we build is what we become, right? And I think especially Mr. Pilgrim was speaking about that to begin with. What we build is what we become. I would say a lot of credit to the city and the city council for making Villa Rica such an attractive place to live, such an attractive place for developers. That said, there's a whole lot of developers coming in here. And if we want to keep Villa Rica the kind of place that we want to be living in another 20 years, I think we have to be very, very careful about what we allow. Developers do want to make money. There's no question. There's nothing wrong with that, but developers want to make money. So I would say that negotiation ongoing, that's great. And I'm looking at gentlemen in the back, because there's a good many people from Mirror Lake here tonight, and I imagine there could be a lot more if this doesn't continue to sort of step along the right path. I think we all agree that development in the right way is a good thing. I don't think we have any problem with it. I think Mirror Lake can get bigger and can flourish. Mirror Lake can also go the other way. So those are my personal concerns. I can't speak for everybody in this room, but I'll bet you some of them feel the same way. So that's about all I have. I'll keep it brief, but thank you very much for the time.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
Anyone else wishing to come forward? Your name and address, please.
My name is Richard Borger. I live at 5006 Cambridge Lane in Mirror Lake. I'd like to thank Mr. Pilgrim for his comments earlier. I'm in agreement. I live in the South Harbor area, and I've lived in Southwood. Prior to that, I've been in the community for 8 years now. The South Harbor community I can agree with as far as the spacing that they're doing. One of my main concerns is going to be Fairway 17 and 16. I think that the density at which they're looking at putting housing in there is not only going to bring down the property value, but it's going to cause us a lot of other problems with, I understand the sewage isn't, you guys may have that worked out, but you're still going to look at potential problems with that, major traffic issues, schooling, taxes. The density alone is just insane. To put something in that area, even if it does end up being focused more towards a senior living or senior focused, nothing else is that dense. Even if you're looking at Carrington, it's not that dense. So to put a dense place in there, and then you're talking about the amenity over there being something that is nice enough to do weddings out of, or something like that, around a community like that, do you think those people are gonna want the entire community walking through there, through the walkway? And it's not gonna work. There's just absolutely no way. It's unacceptable to be able to put such a dense place in there. The Northwoods community site, that's fine, but they're making up with with the lots per acre. They're making up that by just over condensing that one section. So to say that they're doing 2.3 per acre, that's all fine, but what they're doing is they're going to bring down the property values by putting such a dense community in there, regardless of what they want to call it. If there's nothing on paper to guarantee it's going to be that, and like I said, if you look at Carrington, exactly what they have there, they have space. They've got room to move. And you've got to have streets wide enough, if that's what it's going to be able to allow for fire trucks, emergency services to be able to get in there easily and get right back out of there. And by the density and the mapping of what this looks like, you're just not going to have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can ask Mr. Elliott a question and maybe ask the chairman a question. Is this an all or nothing vote tonight, or can we vote individually? Can we vote on 16, 17, or is it all or nothing?
All or nothing.
Just take it, okay, good deal. I just wanted to ask. He mentioned that, and I said, I didn't know if that was an option or not.
I would just like to speak again, just to talk about the pictures, because I don't want anyone to make the same mistake that I made looking at the pictures. Those are, as Mr. Elliott instructed me, those are just drawings, and just, especially when we're talking about lots, it's not necessarily consistent with what's been negotiated. The thing I want to say about Fairway 16 is what we believe we've negotiated is something equivalent, no less than, the current senior geared community, age-developed community. I will tell you also that the primary point of contention that we need to work on over the next week is the Fairway 17 density. We just sent today to Mr. Rush and to Kevin our request, and it's probably not fair to ask them to respond to it necessarily, but we asked for density equivalent to South Harbor. So in addition, that's probably the biggest point of contention that we have. That would obviously change all of the numbers, but that's very different from what they proposed. We might be able to compromise somewhere, but it's also, we're working to change those maps, and don't get caught up with the etchings like I did.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Lee Peoples. I live at 5007 Cambridge Lane. My wife and I live in the South Harbor pod of Mirror Lake. And Mr. Pilgrim and Mr. Flowers, thank you for your comments with regards to this investment that we have as a home. As you guys know, that outside of your retirement fund, your home is probably your largest investment that you have. And here we're talking about, the gentleman said that the existing homes in South Harbor are average at 3,500 square feet, and that we're going to accept today, if you guys vote to approve this, we're going to allow homes that are 1/4 less size than those homes that are existing in there today, which I do not agree with. I think the value needs to be at least at what the homes are in there today. We don't need to be downgrading what's in the subdivision today and impacting the investment that we've made within the community. And I completely agree with your comments, and I would not vote for this today without having the negotiation completed with the developers to at least put us in a position where the value of our investment today will continue to increase. And bringing in smaller homes in there will not do that. Just won't happen. So I appreciate your comments, Mr. Pilgrim, on not moving forward with this. I think that's the right decision until the negotiation is complete. And I would ask that the homeowner association consult with the members. I mean, we haven't been involved in this discussion at all yet. This is the first time we've seen this, so we haven't had an opportunity to really digest it over the past hour and a half. So there needs to be some time, and if it was just given to the homeowners association for 1 week, that's not ample time to agree to it either. So I don't know why this is being rushed through, but I certainly would not agree with moving it to the next stage until there's agreement upon with the community. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Kurt Kraft. I live at 2406 Ridge Lake Drive in the subdivision of Stillwater. And I was on this board for 16 years and the chairman for at least 12 of those 16 years, and I have never seen anything like this. Just to give you an example of what you heard earlier of Twin Oaks, we have a difference of a group of 50 to 60 investors with no names and a Johnny Blankenship. We at least know who the guy is in this one. If Johnny Blankenship wasn't here, then he would send his attorney, but you knew who was involved in the project. This is the first time I've ever seen the city act as a developer ever, on something of this magnitude. And I realize there's a difference. You've got the HOA property and then you've got the PUD. This is covering both. This is covering everything. Here's the plat from the earlier one. Check it out compared to this. That's 3,000 lots on the information I got from the city. Now, being on this board, I'll tell you right now, you won't get rich because you don't get paid, but you do get a packet every month. And I didn't see, now again, just based on the comments here, and in that packet, you have the name of the developer, but you also have the departments in the city. They provide information like sewer, they provide information like how will it affect the education bunch out here, the schools, roads, you name it. And I'm even going to throw in a promise that was never kept, that with 3,000 more units, which is what this proposal is going forward as, we need a police precinct in that area. We were promised that years ago and it never happened. With 3,000 more homes, right now the police, based on the information I got from their website, each police officer is handling 350 calls per police officer per year. Just in 2019, I don't have last year's, they didn't post it. But going forward, they don't even have the information that you normally get on a zoning board to be able to digest all this. And my final note here, if the city is going to act as developer, will that make the city liable for anything that happens in this development that's coming up? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kurt. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Kyle Standridge. I'm at 1001 Chestnut Creek Drive in Mirror Lake, 12-year resident. One thing I wanted to call out, I've heard it a few times, is what the previous plans were approved for relative to what they are now. I understand that these plans were initially laid out in 1998, and it's 2021. A lot has changed, and so over those 23 years, you gain some experience. You get to see, you get to feel it, right? So as it stands today, when I turn onto out of my neighborhood, and I was turning on to 61 to get here, it took me 4 minutes. And now we're talking about several hundred more homes being down that road over near the airport. So it's that much more congestion. It took us years to get the roundabout. Now that's finally in place, but right there at the meat market there, things get stacked up. So I just want to call out that things change over time, and with more congestion, it brings more problems. Back in February, my wife took a spill down the stairs, and living here, here's my home. We had to call 911, and the fire department came, and they came right along this road right here. So when you talk about these smaller homes with these 10-foot setbacks, you're going to end up with smaller driveways, you're going to end up with people parked on the streets, and then that's more congestion for the emergency vehicles that have to come through. We have difficulties with trash as it is today, and so there's difficulties with the mail trucks. So I think this just presents a lot of problems for us going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John Huggins, 1010 Chestnut Creek Drive. It's my first experience of this in the community. I owned a home that my stepdaughter and son lived in for a few years and was able to be here part-time, but since 2014, I've been a full-time resident. I think we need to be very careful in this particular political climate, in this particular climate of disagreement, and I think we need more time to hear what is allegedly involved and what is actually involved, and just respect the individual to kind of look at the situation and deal with some information that may take a little longer than a few hours or a few days. I heard one thing said that really interests me. It was very early in our discussion, was that there was some misinformation or some incorrect information that was going around, and you don't have to tell me about rumors and alleged truths. And so we've heard so many different numbers about so many different number of houses that'll be in Mirror Lake and next to Mirror Lake, and all that is a little confusing. And the last thing I think our community would really welcome is the desire that we pass it on and then find out what's actually in it. That's not going to go over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Marshall Smith, 9636 Coastal Point Drive, and I live in the Club Point section of Mirror Lake. I want to ask a question of probably you, John, and Mr. Elliott here. This 75-foot buffer that's noted here in the green on, as I look at it, the top of Area 17, Fairway 17. Why, is that a perfect barrier where there could be nothing built in that area, that's 75 feet?
That is correct.
Where is the concession coming from then?
The outer 25 feet is an impervious area. The city council can vary that for sidewalk, cart path, that type of thing.
Right.
But in the initial 50 feet, you can't build anything.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have is, what's wrong with what I consider the better half of this lake down here where there's no indication of any green at all? That's going to have the same 75-foot buffer, and at least I would like that indicated in the future when we discuss this. Those property lines right now look like they go right down to the lake. That's not true. They don't. They won't and they can't. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Then I would request, I think as we move forward with this, that we need to make a note of that and don't show it. And one other question is South Harbor now, which is part of this area currently, it appears, does that have that 75 that same 75 feet, or is that older and not taking in some of this?
The South Harbor 2A that's in pink on the master plan was developed 14 years ago under the old buffer. It's another one that was preliminary platted back in the day and then had to be preliminary platted again. The 75-foot will also go with that.
Okay. Then I would just like to note for the commission here that that area that's in green, and there is not, you're not going to have a lake view there if you're on that cart path. That's grown up intensively over the years since I've been here, which has been since 1999. You're not going to be able to see the lake. Maybe a small portion as you get closer to Mirror Lake Parkway is clear. But as many of you know, that used to be the old Starkmar Ranch clubhouse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it has grown up, so I don't think the EPD or the EPA is going to relish you doing anything to all that growth that's on the edge of that lake currently, now. So you're not going to have much to look at in that area. Putting a cart path there, I don't know if it would be beneficial there on that side or the other side, I guess is what I'm getting to. If you're going to continue negotiations, that I just maybe think about that if we're coming back for negotiations. But to me, it just seemed like that should be indicated as a no-build zone, and these lines should be cut at a certain point, so we'll understand this map a little bit better, and maybe look at, in your future negotiations, look at the cart path on this side as opposed to the other side. But you can look at the lake and make that opinion for yourself. I just want to know if that buffer was going to hold true. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Well, I see no one else coming forward at this time. Well, yes, sir.
Good evening. Oliver Clifton, 5016 Cambridge Lane. Opposed to it. Also concerned about what Mr. Pilgrim said about the negotiation, our negotiating strength. I can appreciate that the homeowners association has only had opportunity a short time to negotiate, but again, I'm not aware of what those negotiations or concessions were both as a homeowner and as a member of the HOA. So that concerns me very much as well. And also the other concerns that go by my neighbors is that just the volume of traffic, the load on the schools, the load on the streets, the load on the infrastructure, it can have nothing but a negative impact in those aspects. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, at this time, well, there is another hand.
I'll be quick. I'm Blair Peoples, 5007 Cambridge Lane. I found out about this on Facebook, which is unacceptable. We were not notified about it. Also, I'm a former teacher in Douglas and Carroll County in the city of Villa Rica. Our schools are overcrowded, elementary, middle, and high. This is not a beneficial idea for our children, and I don't think that's something that we always consider when we run with these ideas. Housing is great, but our schools are overcrowded. There is no money to hire new teachers, and it's our children who suffer. 22 to 25 children in a classroom is unacceptable. We can't hire new teachers, there's no more money. We cannot add more housing to add more children to these overcrowded schools. So I hope that you consider this when you're making your negotiations and when you're making your considerations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, at this time then, I will close public comments and revert back to the commissioners and the staff. Ron, you.
Yes. So I just want to let you know what our recommendation is. So we are recommending approval with conditions for this rezoning. And there's a number of different conditions here, and I wanted to outline some of them for the public, for the general public. As a part of the conditions, the developer would need to submit within 1 year of this alteration to PUD plan approval, a preliminary plat application, which would be in accordance with the requirements and depicting the following sections I'm going to outline. And of course, they would need to come back here to this board to be approved. So the first one here on the plat, of course, would be the proposed building footprint and density in each proposed node to be included in the plan development. So that would include the single family and the multifamilies. A public improvement plan showing connections to the existing cart paths, sidewalks, etc. And the third would be a section of Mirror Lake Parkway to be dedicated to the city at the dam for Lake Valdemar. So as you may be aware, and you can actually see it on the pictorial there on the wall, there's a section of Mirror Lake Parkway that was never dedicated to the city. In a part of my research back in October, I was able to find some different correspondences from city representatives, and I was able to cross-reference that with the tax assessor's input. And there hasn't been any deeded section of Mirror Lake Parkway at the dam, so that would be a prerequisite, and that would be a requirement that our department would have in moving forward. So we can have all of our infrastructure in place. It's currently obviously out there, but it's treated, essentially it hasn't been treated as a public road in that specific area.
So this is the area over the dam?
Yes, directly over the dam. You could see that the color on the map is different. So evidently the developer does, or the representatives for the investors rather, is aware of that. So it's actually detailed in white on the map, but the rest of the roadway is in gray, as you could see.
If I may, Mirror Lake Parkway is a city road.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I don't have any records of that, and the tax assessor couldn't verify that. But in either case, it's something that would need to be worked out as a part of this, as a condition. Our second condition here would be a maximum number of single-family units, and we're talking the entire development, everything that has been constructed in addition to this new request would be no more than 2,522 units of single-family. Multifamily would be no more than 767. That would be the maximum. A zoning board.
Ron, how many multifamily units are currently existing?
250.
So that means they could do another 500?
Or so, yeah, rough numbers. Mm-hmm. The fourth condition is the zoning book, phasing plan, homeowners association covenants, and utility plan must be submitted for approval along with the final plat. And the last condition here is the applicant/developer must follow all zoning tabulations and design-based representations as presented in the accompanying document titled Mirror Lake Planned Unit Development Master Plan, which was dated August 2nd, 2021. That's the revised copy that you've received. This document is fully transferable and applicable to any future developer or builder of the site. So if a developer ends up, or the folks who are representing the investors, if they were to go belly up tomorrow, if there's a builder that picks up these lots, all of this needs to be transferred to them. If you recall, this was an issue with several subdivisions previously in the city, particularly Old Town Village, where a developer goes bankrupt, the builder comes in and says, well, we don't need to listen to anything. We weren't the original developer. We just picked up the lots and built a home on them. So we're trying to prevent that from happening as well. We're trying to learn from our mistakes.
Ron, I've got
Thank you, Ron.
a couple questions for staff. I heard some things about the public notice. This is the first time they're hearing about it. Was public notice put out for the residents?
Yes, we have, and I have a copy of public notice. We did submit public notice in our newspaper. I have the notice here. It was not required for a public notice to go out to the individual residents, being that this is a city initiated rezoning request.
That was my next question, were there signs put out?
There's no requirement.
Okay, and then my next question is regarding the EMS access. Are the streets, the way that they're proposed, are they adequate for EMS as far as the codes go?
Streets haven't been proposed yet. No engineering's been done. But the minimum local street in Villa Rica, Georgia is a 50-foot right-of-way, 26 feet back to back from curb to curb.
And that would be a condition in the,
That is a development standard.
okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, yeah. I'm going to make a motion before we vote. I'm going to make a motion that we table this for a couple of months. And the reason for that is simply, I'm not anti-growth. I'm not anti-development. What I am anti, and Mr. Developer, I want to tell you, I am, Mr. Spindle, I'm kind of tough on developers, local ones, but ones from out of town even more so, because I know what happens. Developers move in, they make their money, and they move back to Brookhaven or wherever you live. Well, you work for representative developers. Okay, the representative, you move in, you make your money, you move on. I have no problem making money. I'm all about people making money. However, this very lucrative seat I sit in, I make zero every month for. I did it and I took it because I believe I owe a duty to the people who live here. I owe the people who live here now, and I owe a duty to people who live in the future. And I think if you look at development in a county just adjacent to us to the east, what they did wrong, and they did a lot wrong. And you look at the county just adjacent to this county in the southeast, Coweta, and they didn't do as much wrong. And 20 years ago, both of them were equal. Now one's much better place to live than the other, for the most part. And I think we here have to be good stewards of what we have, and we have to look after who we have. In my line of work, I don't begin negotiating until I know all the facts. I don't begin negotiating a client's case I have discovery. I don't begin negotiating a client's case against a large insurance conglomerate until I have their records, so I know what the doctor said. Here, I just think it's a little too early. I think there are questions that need to be need to be answered. There needs questions that need to be asked. I think there needs to be some time. And look, I understand homeowner association, thankless job. I get it. However, I do think there is some dissension amongst the rates. I won't call it mutiny yet, but there's definitely some dissension. And you guys probably need to talk about this thing. And I just think that by voting on it today, if it passes, if it fails, but I think by voting by today, we definitely give an advantageous position to those who are applying, who again, are faceless and nameless. I understand Mr. Spindle's still representing him. I appreciate his position. I've represented a lot of people that I don't like. But point being is, I think that, and I wouldn't want to be my neighbor. But the point is, I think the most prudent thing for us to do is to table this and give them time to talk about it. That's my motion, to table it for at least 60 days. It's been there since 97, 98. 60 days ain't gonna kill anybody one way or the other. I'm just making a motion.
Mr. Pilgrim, what would you recommend table it for how long?
I think 60 days is fair. I think that gives time for the homeowner association. Ms. Jordan, I know she represents HOA, allow them to talk to the members talk to her. They talk to the actual representatives on the board. I think that gives them time. And now they can spread the word. Social media, however they want to do it, spread the word. And if you're going to affect everybody, they should at least have a chance to have an input. Now, whether they take that chance is another story. Whether they show up, whether they voice their concerns, that's another story. But here, we're not talking about 67 homes like we were in the previous one. We're talking about an overwhelming, amount of homes that could possibly be built and not only affect the neighborhood, it could affect the whole city and the direction of the city. And now, look, I'm all for tax base. I'm all for taxing. I do. I'm a taxpayer here. Again, I live here. My mother lives here. My father lives here. They've lived here since they were born. My dad's lived here since he was born. I was born and raised here. My kids live here. And Ms. Peoples, I do think about the school because I have children still in school. That's always a concern of mine. So those things I think have to be considered. I know today is just zoning, and I understand we may be getting a little off track here, but I think we owe a duty to the people of this city to take those things into consideration when we make decisions. And I just think right now is a little fast to make the call. That's all.
Mr. Pilgrim, this would really have no impact on moving forward. This will come before council next week.
Correct.
So whether you get a second or not,
Understand.
It really will have no impact. Is there a second?
Did you make that as a motion?
I did. I did, John. Motion.
I hear no second, so therefore the motion is not considered.
Thank you.
We'll entertain another motion to approve the staff recommendations with the conditions as stated.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the proposal as recommended by staff with those conditions. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
Nay.
3-1. Ron, Bobby, back to you.
We have no staff updates for this month.
What you been doing?
We have one application in right now, and we're expecting another one by the end of the week. So,
Okay.
some more rezonings, more things that will come to you guys. So we're expecting that sometime in September's meeting.
Okay.
No further business, I'll move to adjourn. Unless there's something else left.
Second?
Second.
Approved?
Approved.
To conclude.
Hang on.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, John,
60 days.
there was no fisticuffs and no blood on the carpet after all.
Not too bad.